Last year, a new girl came to my old school. Immediately, I hated her. As soon as I saw her, I thought she was not funny, trying too little, yet too hard, and overall someone I would never get along with. Well, you see, the only thing I can tell you is that all of those assumptions were soon to be disproved. In fact, currently she is one of my closest friends, and I cannot imagine what my life would be like if she wasn't in it. But why did I do that? Why is it that my natural instinct was to judge her? Well, you see, it had nothing to do with her at all, and everything to do with my mentality. I was so quick to judge her because I was afraid she would judge me first, or that she wouldn't like me, that in the midst of all of that, I forgot that she's a person exactly like me. She, as well as I, are both scared at the feet of this new experience. Well, social psychology researchers have found results that suggest parts of our brain are activated in response to certain words and events, thus determining how we behave. You see, this links to the Gibsonian theory and behaviorist theory, which both argue that perceptual activity puts into motion behavioral tendencies. These tendencies are developed over a period of time, over one's history of successes and failures with similar scenarios. Now, let's dive into the historical world, shall we? Widely believed is the theory that Adolf Hitler was introduced to anti-Semitic ideologies from his youth, hence fueling his prejudice and enabling the rapid growth of his hatred against Jewish people. As he rose to power, these ideologies festered further until he developed an obsession with the idea of purifying the German race. Ultimately, you see, what we're exposed to as children doesn't just leave us as we grow up and know better, because by that point in our lives, that is what we will perceive as better. So I ask you this: how is it that something so toxic is still passed down to every generation? Stepping outside the historical world and into the fictional world of novels, we see in Harper Lee's famous book To Kill a Mockingbird, Tom Robinson is only viewed through the misconceptions and associations with his race, rather than who he is. Consequent to Tom's African American ethnicity, he was assumed guilty, simply because people assumed that his ethnicity instantly made him most capable of murder. Prejudice, according to the Cambridge English Dictionary, is defined as an immoral and illogical opinion or feeling formed without enough knowledge or thought. You see, psychology researcher Karen hypothesized that prejudicial attitudes would inevitably result in the deterioration of health. Din even went as far as hypothesizing and stating that the higher one's level of prejudice, the more likely one is to have poorer measures of mental, social, and physical well-being. You see, the issue regarding prejudice behavior is that it views people as though they're not even people at all, rather as indistinguishable members of a designated community, ultimately distancing and dehumanizing the person. Well, ever since kindergarten, my family labeled me as smart. I felt the need to match up and fill this label my family has given to me years ago. I did it to make them feel proud, but soon enough, that label became who I am. My personality, my mood, my value were all determined by how well I fit into this label given to me years ago. And this is the effect that labeling had on me. And this is what most would consider a good label. Now imagine the detrimental impact one would have to deal with when given a bad label. Often what happens when people are labeled is that they begin to confine themselves to the expectations that people have set for them. They begin to do everything to fit in the mold that people have shoved them into. Whether you wish to believe it or not, how we conceive our identity is nearly entirely based on what others think of us. But we forget that labels are just an efficient categorizing method for complex information. And as soon as we grasp the idea that people are not just complex information, but are so much more than that, we stop feeling this need to confine them. You see, when I took the time out of my day to speak to the new girl, I realized that she and I were basically the same. But it took time, days of texting, afternoons spent hanging out. And without this time and intent to know her personally, I would still think of her the exact way I did before. We, as people in this modern society, need to learn to do this. Without getting to know someone personally, how could we possibly see them as anything other than what our mind makes them out to be? And as great as our minds are, we do not know everything, least of all each other. Thank you.